This is Talk Easy. I'm Sam Fragoso. Welcome to the show. Francis.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
My pleasure. Nice to meet you. What's your first name?
Sam.
Sam. Oh, that's easy.
How are you doing?
I'm good. It's, I'm a little sad. I lost my wife of 60 years. It sort of breaks your heart, There's more to marriage than I mean, you lose a friend, you lose an advisor, you lose it's hard.
The film is dedicated to her. She passed away in, was it May of this year?
April 12th.
April 12th of this year.
Just her birthday is May 4th, so it was just a little bit before. But she saw the film and she was very proud of me, she said.
What did she think of it?
She said, you're the most courageous man I've ever known to do what you felt that you wanted to do, and you didn't let all the reasons not to do it enter into it. She was proud of it. So she told me.
She was with you on most sets, right?
Yes and no. I think I misunderstood. I can remember my father's marriage where, my mother always wanted to work and stuff, and my father said, my wife does not have to work. And there was, it was very different. And I think my wife would have preferred being cast less as, the mother and wife and a little more the collaborator.
She was a very talented artist.
She was, yeah. And she made also beautiful films.
She did.
And some very beautiful art. She was and there wasn't anyone who didn't love her.
It's interesting that she said, you're courageous for having gotten to the finish line of this movie, because she must have known that this was a film you first conceived of in 1977.
May have, it was on and off. I was playing with it, but I was doing other things too in terms of trying to find out who the hell I was.
Right. Yeah, you were a little busy during the 70s, just famously.
Well, after I made The Rainmaker, I sort of quit.
Right.
I wasn't a professional. I wasn't getting paid, and I couldn't take any of my old collaborators like Dean Tavares or Vittorio. I couldn't take that. I couldn't afford them, so I went to places like Romania or Argentina and just worked with students and was just trying to learn more about who I was and how to reconcile the fact that I had one foot in theater and one foot in cinema, and what did that mean?
I want to start with this movie because over the years, I've heard you say that when you write an original screenplay, it's a little bit like asking a question. And when you make the film and finish the film, you get the answers. You first conceived of the film, like I said, I think in 77. The development of the script began shortly after One from the Heart. And then the first draft was completed March 12th of 1984. 4 decades in the making. I'm curious, what are the questions you were asking in writing the script? And what are the answers you've arrived at having completed the film now?
I was interested in some stuff I had read in the Republic, I think, about the nature of, at first, household provisioning had been a matter of you got what you needed. And the idea that why we ended up with this concept of excess. So in the Republic, he talks about when it was household provisioning, you got just how much olive oil you needed, but you couldn't get too much meat because there was no way to preserve it. And then there was another phase where there were people who were, merchants, and they were going to travel to places, and household provisioning got more handled by them, and they, of course, had more than they needed because they had excess. And then that was the beginning of there being people who were of a higher wealth and therefore caste than other people, and there was the beginning of inequality. I was always interested in why the world was as sad and as and as tough on certain people, and what happened to cause believing that human beings are wonderful creatures. Even now when I say it's obvious that we're a genius species. We're all one family. We're a genius species. There's nothing our creativity can't accomplish. Do you agree? And the answer always is, yeah, but we do bad things too with that talent. But that doesn't answer whether we're geniuses or not. That just right away gets to what do we do with the genius. But they don't want it to be known that we're these extraordinary geniuses because they want us to have hubris. And of course, in the church, that was outrageous. If you were saying that human beings...
Which church?
Well, the Catholic Church. The trouble all starts with the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I'm a lapsed Catholic. I know this.
You're a what?
I'm a lapsed Catholic. Yes.
Well, then we know. But in other words, I always felt that whoever employs the artists are running the world, and I knew that the Vatican, for a period of time, had all the artists. And so I asked myself today, who's really employing the artists, and it's the companies. Most artists work in commercials and advertising. Advertising is maybe a $7 trillion business selling a little bit of happiness to people, and therefore they need unhappy people. So are we kept unhappy deliberately so we'll be good customers?
Right. There's a line in the film, I think it's something like, we're selling things that they don't need to be like people that they don't like.
Well, that's been said by everyone. Claims they said it.
It felt like Noam Chomsky to me.
I thought it was. I think it was Will Wright who said it first, but I don't know. But it's true. We buy things that we don't need with money we don't have to be like people we don't like, but there's a million. In other words, are we geniuses or not? That's to me very important. And most people can't get out of the fact that, yeah, there's no creature on Earth that could understand the human genome and be able to figure out how to splice it, can send spacecrafts to Mars to take pictures, can work with particle physics and harness the energy of subatomic particles. So yes, are we geniuses? You don't get the reason we don't ever get that is because those people who do through time come to have run the world know that you can't if people think they're geniuses, they're not easy to control and to manipulate and sell them stuff that they don't want.
So the film is this Roman epic fable set in an imagined modern America. It follows the rebuilding of a metropolis after it has fallen into decline, with these two competing visions of the future. You have the mayor, who says people don't need dreams, they need jobs, they need teachers. And then there's Caesar, who seems inspired as much by Robert Moses as he does by the famed Roman soldier that I have a feeling you modeled him after, dreaming up this utopic, perfect city. I'm curious, what about this debate between the mayor and Catalina interested you in this moment in American life?
I saw that in a book called 12 Against the Gods by William Bolitho. And what fascinated me was the fact that whoever loses in a conflict, like Cleopatra famously, the alliance of Cleopatra and Mark Antony lost against the power of Augustus Caesar, that the winners write the history. So they portrayed Cleopatra as a sort of seductress, and Catiline, who was in the famous debate with Cicero between Cicero and Sergius Catalina, was always, who was killed as a result of it, is always portrayed as evil. And I said, well, what if he wasn't evil? What if that's just the way the victor wrote it? What if he had a better idea? What if he was he had come up with a concept that was, and so that's the way I took it. That if you could say, well, those two were just Mayor Koch or Mayor Dinkins and Robert Moses combined with the Walter Gropius, because I want him to be an artist, not just an administrator as Walter Moses was. What if it's the Robert Moses, Walter Gropius character was this genius architect who had a vision of a beautiful world that we could live in, and it was the Dickens or Cicero character who was more a classicist, but more conventional and wanted more of the same, sort of.
You put all of that into this movie, and I rewatched it last night in IMAX, and the scope of the film is just unbelievable. I mean, like, you put $120 million into the film, and when it came down to directing the picture, you said, quote, "It was very similar to the making of Apocalypse Now," which I'm interested in because Apocalypse Now featured a lot of helicopters, acid trips, Marlon Brando. I'm assuming those things weren't part of what happened in Atlanta, but what did happen in Atlanta?
Well, I can tell you really what happened is I chose an art department. I no longer had Dean Tavaleris because he's like 90 years old or something. So I saw a film that I really was attracted to, which was Ed Norton's film called Motherless Brooklyn. I thought they did a great job on that. And it also involved Robert Moses a little bit.
Oh, it did, yeah. Alec Baldwin, I think, plays him in that.
Yeah, and what I liked about the vision of Motherless Brooklyn is that movies are always hard into the period because every department, the prop department, the costume department, the hair department, all they need cars that are right. They need phones that are the right for that period. In other words, it has to conform to the period. And Motherless Brooklyn dealt with that in a very creative way, I thought. So I was attracted to its production designer and the team that had made it. But she had two aspects to her career. She did a beautiful job on certain independent films. She had made an independent film with Ryan Gosling that was very creative on her part. But she also had hit it big in the Marvel movie, and she was in Georgia making this picture, Guardians of the Galaxy, I believe, which that cost really multiple hundreds of millions than Megalopolis. So what happened was I had sort of signed on for Motherless Brooklyn, but now I was in Georgia with an art department that was immense. There was a production designer, a supervising art director, and 5 art directors, and they were very hierarchical. If I would go to one of the art directors because I saw she had theater experience, she said, "You can't step on toes. You have to go." In other words, it was much more like the army. You couldn't go talk to a colonel unless you got it cleared by the general, which is not the way I ever worked.
Right. So you dismiss one of the folks on that side.
No. What happened was that little by little, a movie always, at the beginning of every movie, even my old movies, every department, when there's a budget, say there's $100, every department puts in for as big a slice of that 100%, as they can. So the art department puts in for 50% of that $100. The DP and the photographer puts in for 40%. The costume department, if it's got someone as brilliant as Milena Canero, puts in 30. So basically you have $100, but all the departments have put in $400. So you've got to kind of figure out how to get them in.
They're all vying for a larger piece of
pie.
Right.
And now in the case of when I had made Dracula, I said, well, I don't need a lot of sets.
Yeah.
A very famous production designer was on it. Yeah. I said, because I have a concept, I want the costumes to be the sets.
And within 2 weeks, you fired them and you hired your son, Roman.
Well, no, that was the effects. The effects people all wanted to do the Dracula effects with the newfangled digital effects. And I said, but, Dracula was written at the beginning of when cinema was, but wouldn't it be interesting to make Dracula as if we were filmmakers from that period, which means effects were magic because Méliès was a magician. So the special effects people said, no, that's a terrible idea. We want to do it with digital effects. So I fired them, of course, because if they wanted to do it with digital effects throughout the movie, they were going to always, so better not to do it. Basically, the director's tool, if he has influence as a producer too, is to eliminate those people who don't want to go for the concept that he wants to make the picture with. And that's exactly what happened on Megalopolis, that despite the fact that she had done this spectacular job on Ed Norton's movie, she was a kind of different she had set up a big hierarchy that wanted to do everything in Megalopolis with the art department. And I wanted to do it with the art department and the costume department and the special effects being live.
You know, the thing I want to talk about, when I mentioned the Apocalypse, Megalopolis, how they're linked, one of the ways these two films are linked is that, one, you own them, and two, you own them because you struggled to find support from
I own them because nobody wanted them.
Exactly. But I'm curious, this rejection, for people who don't remember, of Apocalypse Now, came after having made The Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather Part 2. Like, there's almost no run in the history of cinema that is...
And 5 Oscars.
Better than that.
And still, they wouldn't let me make Apocalypse Now.
They wouldn't let you do that. And I wonder, both then and now, do you think that resistance comes back to what your father, who's a great musician, who you hired on both of the Godfather films, to the thing he always told you growing up, which is that, like kids resisting a new kind of food, it's always tough to get people to try something new?
I don't remember him saying that, but I'm sure he did. But yes, that's no, it just struck a little thing. That's exactly true. I mean, like, you know who is the filmmaker who really did the closest to what I've done in my career is Jacques Tati. Jacques Tati had this wonderful career. He made these wonderful Mon Oncle is so,
unbelievable.
Yeah, wonderful. And he made a lot of money with the success, and he took everything he had and he wanted to make a film no one wanted him to make. And he took everything he had and invested it in this one dream project that he had and made it, and it was a big flop. And he lived in poverty and sort of hung out in the houses of people who loved him because he was Jacques Tati. But he had lost everything and died. And that film was Playtime, which is a magnificent masterpiece. I mean, how do you not get on your knees and say to Jacques Tati, thanks for making us so happy to... for anyone who's not seen Playtime, see it and you'll laugh yourself silly in a profound way.
Yeah.
You know, his comment on modern life is so great. So we wouldn't have had it if he hadn't made that sacrifice. Or Bizet wrote Carmen, and they booed it, and he had a bad heart, and he died of a heart attack at 50, and never knew that Carmen, the opera that is the favorite of people who go to see operas, was made by a guy who thought it was the giant flop. So the history is full of this stuff.
And did you think of the historical context as you yourself were bumping up against that?
I don't know that I ever, I lucked out with Apocalypse Now, but when Apocalypse came out, it was the interest in those days, and I was borrowing the money, was 20, I thought it was more, but they say it's 21% during that period. I mean, that's a lot of interest. So it didn't look like I was going to ever, and it opened the wonderful Dustin Hoffman movie. What was the one that won everything with Meryl Streep and the divorce?
Kramer versus Kramer.
Yeah, that won all the Oscars. Apocalypse Now, and it got bad reviews from some very important. Frank Rich said it was the biggest disaster Hollywood had ever made. So I was pretty... I
wonder if he still believes that.
I don't know. I don't even know. I think he is alive. But a lot of people, there are people who even said bad things about Apocalypse Now Godfather that I remember. I remember someone, which particularly annoyed me, saying, well, Godfather has great actors and great photography and great art direction and great music, but the direction, and my answer was, well, I chose all those people who did all those great things. But I don't know. I'm an old man now. I mean, I've lived this. I've seen some wonderful things in my life. I have the most wonderful children you could have. I have a great grandson, so I'm okay. And I've had this, what is to me the greatest reward of all, when a filmmaker that I admire comes to me and said he became a filmmaker because he saw Apocalypse Now or Rumblefish or something. So I'm okay. I don't have a problem. But I obviously I'm, it's always tough to make a film and have people say, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
When I feel it says what it's trying to say pretty clearly at the end. But I realize it's an experience that it's not like anything particularly. You could say, oh, you look at it and you say, wow, what's that? And then I want to see it again, usually is the reaction I get.
In terms of what films say, you have this quote, every movie has a theme, and that the style of that film ought to be something that comes out of this theme. For the Godfather pictures, not unlike Megalopolis, the theme was succession, right?
Right. I always have one word. I learned that from Kazan.
One word.
One word. You have to be able to say one word because the director makes a million decisions a day. Most of them, you just make them fast. But if you say, oh, well, I don't know the answer, check that word and that word will help you.
I was thinking about the idea of succession, especially with Megalopolis and thinking of the Godfather pictures, because it's a world that you knew pretty well because of dynasty, Italy, Catholicism, guilt, the things
I knew more from what Italian Americans' home life was like.
Which was your life. And I'm curious, growing up as a younger brother, the son of a father who loomed large, did the success of that movie create a similar kind of tension between you and your brother and your father?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Because I was the kid, I was the loser in the family. You know, like I can remember my uncle and my father from the kitchen door that was open. I heard them talking, saying, you know, he's obviously not going to go to college. Maybe we ought to consider some sort of a trade like printing, or in other words, they were thinking that maybe I would go to a trade school and to make a living because I was not, I did terrible in school. I had no,
you remember them saying that through the crack of the door?
I remember the door was open. I heard them having that conversation because I had an Uncle Clarence. I had 7 uncles or a bunch of uncles. Uncle Clarence had a hearing aid, I remember, and he was very passionate about opera, but he wasn't a genius at anything like all the other brothers were musical geniuses, and Clarence became a printer, so they were sort of identifying me with the intellectual loser of the family who would have to be a printer or some sort of trade person, a typesetter or something.
In the past, you said, my brother had talent and my father had talent. I was the one that did not.
Well, they used to say, you know, they were also really good looking. My mother used to say, Augie's the brilliant one. He's 5 years, and he was. No question about it. I didn't argue with that. He was 5 years older. I mean, he was a wonderful big brother to me. So August is the brilliant one. Tally, who was the girl my mother wanted, was the beautiful one. But Francie, he's the affectionate one. That's me.
Is that true?
Oh yeah, I'm a very affectionate person.
It's funny. It's the idea of, like, I think people listening to this are going, Francis Ford Coppola doesn't have talent. It doesn't. I don't think that tracks to people. At least that's not how they think of you.
Yeah, but I'm only Francis Ford Coppola because I had an older brother who was brilliant, whose name was August Floyd Coppola, and all his work was signed August Floyd Coppola, August Floyd Coppola. I wanted to be the junior version of whatever he was. Right. So if he was going to be a novelist, then I would try to maybe be a playwright. Or if he was going to be a doctor, I would be an optometrist. I would be always the junior version. So when I started writing stories, I called myself Francis Ford Coppola to copy him. And he was very kind. He once made me a folder that said FFC to put my stories in. But when The Godfather came out, I became so famous as Francis Ford Coppola that he could no longer be August Floyd Coppola because it looked like he was imitating me, but I was imitating him. So it caused a strange reversal in my family, which was very... which I tried to deal with in the movie Tetro, but he hated that movie, so I
He didn't like it?
No.
Can we talk about one of the first stories you wrote?
Yeah.
You're on a music scholarship in military school in 1955.
Right.
Donald Trump is your classmate.
Well, he was younger. He was.
Right.
I don't know how old he is, but he was like 13 when I was 16.
You wrote this romantic musical, and when you finished it, you did what most people do when they finish writing something. You want to share it with someone, and you shared it with your roommate.
Louis Cohen.
Yeah, Louis Cohen.
He was wonderful.
Do you remember the night that you showed it to him?
Yes, I do.
What happened?
he was a brilliant kid. He was reading Ulysses, this 16-year-old, one of only 2 or 3 Jewish kids, but he was great. He basically told me that it wasn't any good, I think. Now I'm not exactly sure, but I know I cried all night because
Yeah.
I didn't have talent, and in my family you had to have talent.
You cried about not having talent, and yet you found a way to move forward. I mean, you did have some talent. It seemed like the talent was that you wanted it more than other people. Is that fair?
Well, they used to do little skits where, the military academy boys would put oranges and dress up like girls, typical military school behavior. And our skit for the band was always the best skit because I was sort of telling them how to do it and using the fact that some people could play instruments to augment the skits. So we did the best skits, and that was the first time that I had any recognition for any ability at all.
How did that feel?
Great. I loved it. I loved to have some ability to, and that's what made me write this big musical.
The persistence and the enthusiasm that I'm talking about. I heard you say once before that I'm not like Scorsese or Spielberg or Lucas. They were born to do this. I think I have genius but no talent, really. What do you mean by that? What does that mean to have genius but no talent?
I don't know. Another thing I always used to say is I failed upwards. I don't understand myself. I mean, I know that there are filmmakers that just they can see the movie. That Spielberg is like that. I mean, think of the movie he made with Christian Bale. I mean, one of many movies made, but that movie just amazes me. Or the movie he made that is not so famous, but was AI that he made. I think that's that film just made me weep because of my own story of the mother who didn't want the boy. That's what my mother didn't want me. I wasn't handsome like my brother, and she wanted a girl. And basically my mother was a very magical, beautiful, silly young girl. And she used to make me look in front of a mirror and bite my big lower lip. A big deal was made of my big lips. That's why I have a beard. And she would say, "Bite your lip." And I would go like that. She said, "There, now you look just like your brother." She wanted me to get a lip job. She wanted me to have plastic surgery, when I was a kid. So that's why in Megalopolis, this mother that doesn't love him, men do crazy things when they men stand out when they think their mother didn't want them. I didn't think my mother wanted me.
Yeah, the line in the film.
Alligators had the right idea, they eat their young. That was played by my sister, so she knew my mother.
Yeah.
In fact, when I directed her, all I did was trick her to be like my mother. That whole thing about, well, you didn't thank me when you won the Nobel Prize. That was all. Although I must say that, and later, my mother, when the famous story of when Paramount wouldn't let me do Apocalypse Now, I took all the Oscars. And I said, "What good are these?" And I threw them out the window, and they, of course, all smashed, and they're just dross inside.
Do you regret that a little bit?
And my mother took all the pieces, and she went back to the Academy, and she said, "Oh, my poor son, Francis, the housekeeper was dusting, and they fell, and they're mangled, and she got them replaced."
So what does that mean?
It means that despite the strange relationship I had with my mother, there was some times that she always came to my aid, because she was a magical pretty young girl who married young, and she did many things. It was her idea that when I finally said I wanted to be in the theater, that she gave me money to go to see, since we lived near Great Neck, she gave me money to go see a Broadway matinee every Wednesday. And I went there alone and saw, new plays on a Wednesday. And that was very kind of her. And once when I wanted a car, this dream car, she helped me sort of trade in the old Buick and get a sexy Plymouth convertible.
Mm.
I mean, she was magical. I don't know how she was like a kid and very beautiful.
You know, we're talking about madness, and when you made Apocalypse Now, which is kind of how we got back to all of this, your late wife, Eleanor, made a beautiful documentary.
Fabulous. Well, she was the best handheld camera person, shy of Claude Lelouch, in the world.
It was called Hearts of Darkness. And she said something like, Francis is not making the film is remaking him.
Interesting.
In the process of making these movies, thinking, getting our way back to Apocalypse, then One from the Heart, did you find that the act of making it did remake you in some way?
Well, I must say it's pretty, as I think back, I think that when I was working on on Godfather, I had no power at all. But I had used the sort of Machiavellian ability that I developed to in the drama school to do what I wanted despite the faculty.
This goes back to Hofstra.
So I was sort of becoming Michael Corleone, and he was me. When I made Apocalypse Now, it was ridiculous. I mean, there was a whole Air Force that was flying in and out because there was a war going on. And so to hold that together, I had to become like a megalomaniac, crazy person like Kurtz. So I became Kurtz. Then later, when I really wondered what was going on, I made a film called Gardens of Stone about a man played by Jimmy Caan who gets very finds a young boy that he admires and like a son almost, and the son is killed. And my son was killed when I made that movie. I mean, I was making a movie about a man who lost his son, and right in the beginning of it, I lost my son, this one beautiful boy I had that I loved and who wanted to be, like a director. And I said, what's going on? Is this my life, that I have to live everything that I'm working on? I have to lose my son in order. And that's when I really wondered to this day that perhaps my whole life is really being written by Charlie Kaufman. That what's going on with me is not what I think. That makes me wonder if, in fact, my life is a movie I'm making. And I mean, how can you explain that every time I make a movie, I become the person that's in the movie, down to that my son gets killed? That doesn't add up.
God, how did you keep making that movie? How have you kept?
That's all I know how to do. My wife used to tell me all the time. She had one line she used to give me. She said, give your brain a rest. But I don't know how to. The only way I know how to give my brain a rest is to make another project. So even when I was doing Megalopolis on this difficult movie with a lot of complex relationship with the art department and reconciling it, but I'm always doing, it's like you're always reconciling one big dominant department with another. The art department doesn't want there to also be a big wardrobe department, a big hair department, a big special effects department. They want it all to be under their control. And how do you reconcile that with the fact that, all this other stuff is going on? And so what I did is I took a motel and I started to rebuild the motel into this extraordinary, a unique facility, so that when I had to rest from Megalopolis, which had too many problems, I would just think about this hotel project was being built. You can see it; it's fabulous. And then when I had problem with the hotel where it wasn't getting codes, the local people would put a red thing on the door. Then I would go and I would work on Megalopolis. In other words, I used one project as the rest and comfort of the other project. So I had two projects going on. One was the building a hotel, and one was making a movie.
I want to bring us back to Megalopolis. At the beginning, we mentioned how this, after the madness of Apocalypse Now, is when you really dug into writing Megalopolis in earnest. And this was also after One from the Heart and the fallout of that picture, which forced you to sell Zoetrope Studios and temporarily pause this, what sounds like a utopic-like film studio.
It was wonderful. But I made some big mistakes.
Well,
In other words, when I had this wonderful place, if I knew you at that time, I would have given you an office. I gave my brother an office. I fully 100% occupied the studio with my friends and family and stuff. And what I should have done is I should have just occupied 20% of the studio and rented the 80%.
Right.
Because I lost the studio because I couldn't make the mortgage payment.
Which was the Chase Bank, right? It was like $31 million or something like that.
Well, that was a mistake, too. That was outrageous. And they came to me at 11 o'clock at night when I had just a big argument with my wife, and I was told by my president of my company that they were going to stop funding the picture unless I signed a personal guarantee.
That was One from the Heart.
Yeah, and all I had to do was say fine, because the only collateral they had on the picture was the picture. So if I said, do what you want, if they don't want to fund it anymore, fine. But I want to, as they well knew, that all they had to guarantee the money that had gone in so far was the movie. So they would have had to finish the movie. But I was so concerned about my personal situation, and I didn't realize that that person had a gambling problem and that the bank knew it, and they were giving him some money. So I was improperly induced to signing a personal guarantee that I could have basically, I mean, it's illegal what they did. You understand the difference. In other words, they said, we will stop funding this movie unless you give us all your assets against it. And because all they had was the movie. So it was absurd.
And that movie came out of what seems to me as your truest, most idealist sense of self, and the way you wanted this studio to be, how you imagined movies could be made.
Right,
and
it was Hofstra College in the movie business.
And the parallels between this studio and the city at the heart of Megalopolis, to me, are just striking. And I have here a page from 5 volumes of notes that you had amassed in the process of making Megalopolis. And I thought, if you wouldn't mind, you could read from this page of notes. Here we go.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, read what you like.
What little fortune they had, Catalina lost in those tempestuous years from 1972 to 1979. No, that's me. That was when the design authority was at its most ambitious. There was a school interconnected with the design studio and architectural firm. Catalina had modeled it on Walter Gropius's Bauhaus. Except the students' garden and cafe and the screening rooms and library began to take up more of his time, energy, and money than the jobs that theoretically were going to pay for it all. He ran the company like a summer theater company where everybody loved everybody and loved working with everybody. There were no friends now. Oh, there were those architects doing well. He'd run into them at Mortimer's or the Oyster House, and there'd be an obligatory brace, extra hand, so hard, so he'd feel how much he meant to them. They were all trading on his association, out rich and written about everywhere, while he was scratching in the dirt for a job. How exotic the feelings they produced in him. But the more they consoled him and treated him as though he was not a has-been, the more he felt like one. 10 worthless, snubbed at banquets, cooling bank credit, mistreatment by former subordinates, but he could endure the insults, the booze and bad reviews. What he couldn't stand was the drying up of the money. Did I write this? But in these terms, or did you translate it to being, I guess this is me looking at the character. You know, I did do something that I really did, which is a wonderful memory, is that I went to the junior high school across from that studio. And I was in there and I had no friends. And there was a redheaded boy who was in the theater department. And I wanted to go to the play. And he said, well, you can go to the play. And after the play, there was going to be a big party for, the play. Pretty much all the families were going to go, and I wanted to go. And then the redheaded kid said, no, you can't go. because you're not really in the play. And I just was heartbroken. I couldn't go. And I went outside and I went to the studio, which was faced the thing with the gates. And I said, someday I'm going to be the one who gives the party and say who can go and who can't go. And later I bought that studio and I went into the same junior high school and spoke to the kids at an auditorium. And at one point I took the whole auditorium. I said, kids, come on, we're going to go into the studio. And I led the kids in through the gates of the studio and all through the studio and made them all apprentices. That school had apprentices, that kids that came every afternoon, and some were apprentices in the art department. Some, the ones who were interested in acting became apprentices to the actors on my picture. I've always loved kids being as apprentices, and that school it was the only studio that had apprentices.
It's also your love of collaboration, of dreaming with other people side by side.
Well, in Megalopolis, those kids working with him in there, those are wonderful filmmakers. They were my apprentices, boys and girls from different countries, from France, from Sweden, and really the talented filmmakers of the students. And they had their total run of the picture, and they could ask me any question or make any suggestion. They were the only ones who could everybody could make suggestions. It's easy to hear. But I really took the young filmmakers' suggestions doubly serious.
But that desire to want to work with people, to want to invest in young people, is at the heart of Megalopolis, I think. You said in Rolling Stone that you have 3 gifts: a good imagination, a fantastic memory, and Cassandra-like ability to see the future. Last night in the Q&A, in reference to the upcoming election, you said America is Rome. It's going to happen again in a few months. What did you mean by that?
Well, I mean, this movie is coming out right at when we're about to have this very daunting test of our republic and our democracy, and for reasons similar to Rome. Rome had been, of course, the conqueror of the world, so that a lot of money flowed into Rome. People don't realize it, but America, when you hear the politics, America has inflation, but the whole world has inflation, and America is considered the admiration of the world on how they've handled the inflation. In other words, we have done a better job than Europe, and our economy is in fabulous shape. So it's really somehow this election is like Rome's election, because those senators in Rome, there was a lot of money pouring into Rome, and so quite a few of them were wealthy and powerful, and so their concern was more their wealth and their power than governing the country. So the parallel between Rome and America is stronger now, and right at the same moment when Rome became ultimately a dictatorship and then a monarchy. I mean, Augustus was an emperor.
You said you have a great ability to predict the future. Do you lean either way where we're going to go?
Yes, I lean towards the greatness of the human family, and at the end of the movie, which is they stop time, but the baby goes on. And I think that yes, I view a beautiful future for humanity, and there's not a problem we can't solve with this ecology. I mean, there are if we weren't involved in these idiotic wars, how that can even be going on is beyond me. I mean, how. To me, every human baby is our human baby, and if you said, everyone agrees children should not be killed, they'll all say, yes, children should not be killed. But I mean, there's 30, 40,000 young kids being killed every week in Sudan and in parts of Africa and in Palestine. These are potential geniuses. These are new Archimedes and new Beethovens and new Einsteins and think of the gifts they could give. So So I have profound hope and faith that the genius of the human being will prevail, and we'll make you of course don't have children.
How do you know?
Well, I shouldn't say that because you're so young. But you
can see the long hair. Is that
no, you're 20. You're 27.
30?
And do you have children?
I don't. No.
Kids are the best. I mean, I have wonderful kids, and as you know, I mean, my kids are sort of famous now. And even my little granddaughter, Giancarla, just did a wonderful movie for that premiered at. And I have a great.
She's been working since Palo Alto.
Yeah, yes. Palo Alto was a good movie. Yeah. And then there was more to her second film. Her second film got trashed because the actor didn't like it. That she had it. You know, it's dangerous when a young director works with a very powerful star.
I want to talk about the future by talking about the past for a second. You've told reporters you only have 2 regrets. First is not making One from the Heart
the way I had planned it, which was a total live experience, because Vittorio came to me and said that he would rather do it where he could stop and stuff. And I loved Vittorio Storaro. So what I should have said to him was, you know, Vittorio, if you don't feel you're going to do it, I'm going to fire you and bring on someone who knows how to do it, whom I knew who it was. But I didn't do it because I cared too much for him, and that was a big mistake, to plan a movie to be made a certain way and then not do it that way.
And then the other regret, you said, isn't mine alone, but my amazing generation, which didn't leave the cinema in better condition for the next generation.
Well, didn't leave, not the cinema, because my generation did many wonderful things. But if you're a young filmmaker and you want to get money to do a project, it's not easier than it was when I was looking to get it. And I think I would have been happy. I haven't died yet. So maybe I can figure out a way, if I have luck, to make it easier for someone to get. That's what the American Film Institute was supposed to be.
Right. But I want to hold your quote seriously, which is the future of film, not to mention your history in it, is something you've spent a lot of time thinking about. You devoted large chapters of your life with Zoetrope, American Zoetrope, then Zoetrope Studios, to change the industry. Are you any closer to understanding why your amazing generation, which is what you call them, didn't leave the movies in a better condition for the next generation? Like, why do you think that happened?
They didn't leave the opportunity for young people to get funded easier. I mean, what Marty did with his work, with his preservation work and everything, he's the greatest film teacher who ever existed. He did a lot. Everyone did a lot. But I think if some person here wants to make a film, there isn't anywhere to go to get a subsidy in our country. I mean, they have it in Europe, they have it in other places, but we didn't leave. I meant that the AFI was supposed to do that, and that was its intention. So I feel badly that if like, I know all these wonderful apprentices, if they want to make a movie, where are they going to go to get a little help, you know, to get some sort of a subsidy or a way so they can make the movie. When I wanted to make The Conversation, there was nowhere I could go to get a little bit of money to make that film. I was turned down by every possibility.
The parallels between the One from the Heart and Megalopolis are, you know, the way those two speak to each other. You owed, like we talked about, Chase some money, and the fallout forced you to sell the studios. And in that period, you did a New Yorker profile where you said, if you don't bet, you don't have a chance to win. It's so silly in life to not pursue the highest possible thing you can imagine, even if you run the risk of losing it all. Because if you don't pursue it, you've lost it anyway. You can't be an artist and be safe. At 85, having put $120 million into this movie, do you still feel the same about that you cannot be an artist and be safe?
Absolutely. You know, you know, making art without risk is like making babies without sex. It's the way I feel. Risk is part of it. And
that's going to be the headline from the podcast. You know, you said that you're living a life that you feel Charlie Kaufman is writing, but that you're directing. Right.
But but I mean, his kind of mentality, because, you live from left to right. You live from young to old, but the only way to understand it is to look from old to young. And like if I put eyes on what I was like when I was 16, 17, or even 13, I understand it better from this vantage point. But it's very hard to do to view it the other way.
Right.
But we know that our brain interprets everything for our survival, so that we're not getting a real impression of what the thing out there it really is.
Mm.
So I know that. So, who knows? I mean, that's why I mentioned Charlie Kaufman, because he's an extraordinary person, and his mind is so unusual that I think someone of that type of creativity is I would better understand my life through his lens than I can my own.
My last question for us. When we started the interview today, I asked you how you were doing, and you immediately mentioned your late wife, Eleanor, who was a tremendous talent, a great writer, a great filmmaker, and the two of you met. My understanding is the two of you met on the set of Dementia 13. It was one of your early movies. It was funded by Roger Corman, and she wrote. I remember him with his pajama pants on, his shirt off, sitting in a circle of script pages on the floor. She had said then that she knew you were, quote, a risk taker and commanded a vision of what he wanted. You had the sense, too, of his dedication and commitment to go forward, ready or not, into this production. She said that same man appeared before her on Apocalypse Now as she was making Hearts of Darkness. What that film captured, what I think Megalopolis demonstrates, and what I think she's getting at, is that you lived there, mind racing, as you said, in the movie. You lived there first and foremost in the movie. And I wondered, as we go, at 85, I know she's no longer with us, but is the movie the place you still long to live in?
Well, I know I'm done with Megalopolis because I am just finished a new script of something I want to begin, that I will live in London. And I want to live in London because I never lived there, which means I never lived there with her. And I won't wake up every morning and say, where is she? Because I've never been there with her. But I have the script, and I'm hoping I can find financing for it, because I can't just keep borrowing money to make movies. Mm-hmm. But that's where my mind is. I also hope that I survive that, so I could maybe, as a last film, make my film Distant Vision, which is my live movie.
So you still want to keep going?
Yeah. Do you have an electric toothbrush?
I do.
Yeah. Do you know how you set it and you do it? It times the thing, and then all of a sudden it just stops.
Right.
I think that's what it's like when you die. I think you're just doing it. I mean, and then it just stops. Or as Epicurus said, why worry about death? Because where there's life, there is no death. And when death comes, you don't exist.
Francis, I know you said earlier that you hope to have inspired young filmmakers, and you know that you have. And I just want to say it has meant the absolute world to me that you have sat down with me for this and have been as open as you have. And I congratulate you on the movie, and I thank you for the time.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Are you going to make movies?
Yes.
Great. You know what? The secret of life, do what you love.
And I love doing this with you. So thank you. Francis Ford Coppola.
Thank you. Thanks. Good luck to you.